has been and will become.
Taking the stand, Elon's compensation for his initial investment of $38 million. Sam Altman worked together to launch the startup in 2015. AI has turned into an $800 billion business. The trial between the two bickering billionaires never reached its core philosophical question. Did OpenAI stray from its initial goal of benefiting humanity, turning from a non-profit to a for-profit company? Musk was seeking dramatic changes, including the restructuring of OpenAI's business model and changes in the leadership led by Sam Altman and Greg Brockman. In a social media post, Musk reiterated his version of events and said he will be filing an appeal.
There is no question to anyone following the detail that Altman and Brockman did in fact enrich themselves by stealing a charity. The only question is when they did it.
The outcome is a major relief for OpenAI as it eyes a potential initial public offering, which would make it one of the largest IPOs in tech history.
The 25.
Minister Denis Manturov, who is part of Russia's heavyweight delegation, is already in China. He has met with the Chinese Vice Premier, whose arrival in Beijing. They discussed key issues that will be the focus of the Intergovernmental Russian-Chinese Commission on Investment Cooperation. They also underlined the need for building stable business ties between the two nations. Well, Russia's relations with China thrive.
Xi Jinping have been meeting quite often. Last year alone, the two leaders met twice. In May, Xi Jinping visited Moscow for the Victory Day military parade on Red Square. Then in September, Vladimir Putin came to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit and was the guest of honor in Beijing at a massive military parade marking the 80th anniversary of victory over military Japan. So clearly, there is no shortage of personal contact, red carpets, and photo ops. But let's take a closer look at what Russia and China have actually managed to achieve since their last big summit. One of the biggest announcements came from right here, Beijing, on September 2nd. Guests from Russia's energy giant and China's CNPC signed what was described as a legally binding memorandum on power of Siberia to a massive gas pipeline. According to the Russian side, will be the largest and most ambitious natural gas project in the world to date.
It should be understood that the Power of Siberia 2 project and construction of the Mongolian Soyuz Vostok transit pipeline, along with the corresponding gas transportation capacities in China, will now be the largest, most ambitious, and most capital-intensive project in the global gas industry.
For Russia, it's part of a long-term strategic pivot east, especially as many of its former European customers are cutting themselves off from Russian energy, often at a cost of their own economies. For China, it means another major source of pipeline gas delivered over land and far less vulnerable to disruptions like the ones we're now seeing in the Middle East. The China-Russia relationship is deeply pragmatic and has always revolved around national interests, not ideology. Western powers have long criticized Beijing for buying Russian energy, saying it helps Moscow cushion some of the impact of sanctions.
China is by far the biggest purchaser from Russia. If Europe did something with respect to China, I think China would probably maybe force an end to the war. I've got legislation that will allow President Trump to put tariffs on China for buying Russian oil and gas.
85 U.S. senators are willing to give President Trump the authority to put up to 500% tariffs on China for the purchase of Russian oil.
Yet for China, it has always been about its own energy security, and that approach paid off tremendously when the Hormuz crisis erupted. While many Asian nations were scrambling for fuel, China's seaborne imports of Russian oil surged to an all-time high of 1.92 million barrels per day in February. In other words, Beijing had spent years building that kind of energy cushion that suddenly became very useful when the region started panicking. Even though the fuel prices in China have risen several times, local gas stations have not seen the kind of chaos reported in neighboring countries like South Korea and the Philippines, where drivers were stuck in long lines at the pump. In China, gas stations remained calm and orderly.
Opposes illicit unilateral sanctions. The normal economic, trade and energy cooperation between China and Russia does not target any third party and should not be disrupted or affected.
This cooperation is visible not only in economics but in politics too. At the UN, Moscow and Beijing took plenty of heat from Western diplomats after both countries refused to back a U.S. drafted resolution on the Strait of Hormuz.
No one should tolerate that they are holding the global economy at gunpoint. But today, Russia and China did tolerate it.
Russia and China chose to shield their ally Iran rather than join international efforts to open the Strait.
But the point is that Russia and China were reading the crisis differently. For Moscow and Beijing, Iran wasn't the aggressor, and the main problem was the war itself, a conflict they argue was triggered by the U.S. and Israel.
The Russian Federation could not support a text that would create a dangerous precedent for international law, international maritime law, any peace efforts, as well as the authority of the UN Security Council. In essence, almost every paragraph of the draft they proposed was rife with unbalanced, inaccurate, and confrontational elements.
And of course, there's also the human side of the relationship. China has now scrapped visas for Russian citizens, allowing them to come here for up to 30 days for business and tourism. Russia, for its part, responded with similar visa-free rules for Chinese travelers. So, when Putin lands in Beijing in just a few hours, he won't be here to reset the relationship. He'll be here to push forward a partnership that has already spent the past year gaining speed. I'm concerned.
It looks like it's going to be fabulous. Just to say once again, the whole thing is going to be inflated, okay? Let's hear from the artist.
In open, people will be able to walk through the artwork. However, there will only be one way through to keep the flow moving smoothly inside within the piece. But what's beautiful is that you'll be able to come at 5 in the morning, at 4 in the afternoon, and you'll suddenly find yourself immersed in another world, in the cave, Kevin.
And I'm sure once it's inflated, we'll...
Basically, according to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the use of the airspace over the Baltic states is not going to satiate and satisfy the appetites of the Ukrainian military. They have indeed frequented the airspace over these countries lately, trying to launch drones deep into Russia, but now they're planning to use the soil of Latvia to directly attack Russia. According to the Foreign Intelligence of Russia, the Ukrainian military, they have already dispatched Ukrainian drone operators to Latvia. They are already there in the country, stationed at least 4 military bases in Latvia, and the concerns that Riga might have had over its own safety, those concerns have been completely brushed aside in what the Foreign Intelligence of Russia has called adamant and rampant Russophobia. What Ukraine is hoping to achieve here is to drastically shorten the flight time of the drones launched from Latvia, which borders with Russia, and this would narrow the window for the Russian air defenses to react to this incoming threat. Now, this would be a major escalation, and this statement by the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service is a big warning to Latvia, which, by the way, is already in a state of turmoil, I have to say, over Ukraine using its airspace for strikes against Russia. See, one of the drones crashed on Latvian territory, and this caused a diplomatic and a internal political scandal in Latvia. The defense minister was sacked by the PM, and then the prime minister herself resigned along with the entire cabinet. So Ukraine's recklessness has already cost jobs for these politicians and perhaps careers for some, but neither Ukraine nor Latvia evidently seem to ready to stop there. They are indeed expanding, it seems, their military cooperation, which, again, according to Russia has warned time and time again that this is a serious escalation, that Russia knows the potential launch sites. They know where Ukrainian drone pilots are being stationed, and all this is basically a list of potential targets against Latvia this time, and this, of course, would be a huge escalation. Over the borders of Ukraine, and Kyiv has been indeed trying to drag other countries, especially the Baltic states, into its war with Russia. And this would of course achieve the alliance has been trying to prevent, but well, actually it has been barreling towards further escalation, as it has been providing more and more opportunities and more aid to Ukraine, which Russia sees as a direct threat, especially the use of the airspace over third countries, over Baltics, over Finland, and so on.
And there is a long-standing, well, maybe not legally binding, but still commitment on defense expenditure that has been ignored for, I would say, several decades. And I would argue that for far too long, European NATO member states have lived on peace dividends. Somewhat, looking, as my colleague said, someone will always protect us and provide the security umbrella. This realization is suddenly kind of disappearing, and realization that we need to step up on our defense capabilities, readiness as well. And I would say that this term, Parliament, and both Commission as well, for the first time defines defense and security as anchoring the competences at the EU level, because it was a taboo. Defense expenditure or anything security related to be funded from the EU central budget. It wasn't even at the bureaucratic level, but even at the banking sector. Loans were not given if you're related in any way to the defense industry and so on. So this is what we can see for the past 2 years. A tectonic shift in policy making and understanding where we are and what needs to be delivered. So we have several initiatives already delivered. The mini defense omnibus, that is for the current MFF, where we give the flexibility for member states, because I have to remind, defense-related initiatives, exclusive competence for member states, what they will procure on strengthening the defense capabilities, but Europe can give incentives to strengthen the defense industry, military mobility. We have far too long bottlenecks across Europe. NATO is saying that we have 400,000 high readiness troops that can be deployed within 30 days. But then again, if we look at the regulation within the EU, to get one, cargo from one member state to another takes up to 30 to 40 days. So this is something where we're also pushing to reduce the red tape for military mobility within Europe.
You've been talking about these same bottlenecks, haven't you, Tobias Kramer, in the context of the fragmented defense market? Maybe give us a few examples of that.
I mean, I saw it myself before I was elected. I was a diplomat in the German Foreign Office, and I was actually responsible for the Baltic countries. And for instance, I was working on the German brigade going to Lithuania, and we saw how many bureaucratic hurdles there were in getting there. And we think we have somewhat freedom of movement for our goods. Like if you have a lorry, normally in civilian way, you can cross the border, no problem at all. It can be sold from one company to the other. As soon as you start painting that lorry in camouflage and it's used by our troops, it often takes certificates for it. It needs to be recognized in each member state anew, and that's simply absurd within the European Union. We have 27 separate defense markets. We have little bonsai armies, and it's not just inefficient, it's costly, and And in the end, what we see right now in Ukraine and in other parts of the world, it can even be deadly if we can actually not deliver and if we don't have common norms and standards.
But you can't really have a quantum leap because, as your colleague just said, it is ultimately a national competence defense.
Russia to conduct the nuclear force on May 19th to 21st. Sweden to buy 4 frigates from France's Navy Group. News update: ex-Spanish Prime Minister, Spain, at least 2 dead, 4 injured in South Spain shooting, suspect arrested, police announced. Mango founder's son arrested in probe. French's finance ministry say G7 agree IMF, World Bank need to step up effort to aid vulnerable countries. News update and headlines. News update and headlines. United Kingdom get experimental drug from Japan for hantavirus response. Neymar included in the Brazilian World Cup. Strike threatened in Los Angeles against the presence of anti. News update and headlines.
We have to wait and see if negotiations can succeed before the window of diplomacy is closed or not.
Had posted bail for his support, confirming he would continue to deny his guilt. He also told the news media he had been held in a private cell. The $3 million bail was contributed by companies registered in Ukraine and individuals, including many influential local figures.
Russia greatly respects China's century-old history. Vladimir Putin. Ukraine planning attack on Russia through ballistic states. News update and headlines. Yermak's bail just a show PR stunt. Zelensky richer than US President. Putin's relationship with China have reached unprecedented level. Relation with Beijing based on mutual understanding, Putin says China-Russia trade has grown well beyond $200 billion US. News update and headlines. Russia and China cooperate, Putin says. News update and headlines. News update and headlines.
So this is the reality we're facing in Ukraine today. Nothing is true, nothing is real. It was just a big theater for the society and for the Western elites. But we have to understand the Western elites, they have their own plan for Yermak. Yermak was given a signal by this that he was let to be out of prison. They let him to get the bail. They let him to see what can be the reality for him, not only for him, but for Yermak and for Zelensky in the future, because they're paving a path for Budanov. That's where they want Yermak out. Yermak was out officially, but unofficially he was all behind the curtains, not letting Budanov do his work in the Zelensky surrounding. And basically, this was a show for Yermak also to see this can be your future, but without the money.
us again on another fruitless discussions for months and years. We have to focus. We have initiatives already. Let's deliver.
Let's end on that note. Thank you so much to...
1948, and they killed thousands and injured thousands of my people, and they brought them outside from their lands. So our father told us everything about this, and we teach our children. We like to tell all the world we are strong enough and know how to defend about ourselves. And our struggle starts with the first moment when we started to fight our land, and we continue our struggle to keep Palestine free. And we have very strong believing that my country will be free one day, inshallah. Our children are strong, our women are strong, my people are strong in Gaza and in the West Bank. And the people in the West Bank try all the time to attack our villages and cities in the West Bank. But my people defend about themselves, and they kill from my people every day in the West Bank and in Gaza. If we are feeling that we are not alone, all the initiatives will stand with Palestine and will support Palestine, and we stand with the side of Palestine, the President of the Republic of Andricia, the government of Andricia, and the people of Andricia. And Andricia, my second country, I'm feeling in my home with my people, with my family. And in this moment, I'd like to thank Andricia so much about this big support to Palestine and the Palestinian people.
The collective memory of the...
Let's just be clear.
Has somehow found a place inside my chest. How something so far can feel this close.
They trifled with us today. We blew them away. They trifled. I call that a trifle. I'll let you know when there's no ceasefire. You won't have to know. If there's no ceasefire, you're not going to have to know. You're just going to have to look at one big glow coming out of Iran. And they better sign their agreement fast.
Could you give us an update on what is latest in the talks?
No, the talks are going very well, but they have to understand, if it doesn't get signed, they're going to have a lot of pain. They're going to have a lot of pain. They want to sign it, I will tell you. They want to sign it a lot more than I do. You know, we're dealing with different sets of leaders. When you talk about regime change, you know, they keep talking about regime change. Well, we got rid of the first regime, we got rid of the second regime, we got rid of most of the third regime, and then they say, oh, is that regime change? I think it's the ultimate regime change. But look, and this is very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon because as tough as they are, we want to keep them alive. We want to keep all of you alive. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't. And they've agreed to that. Any questions? Only for the fighters now, I think, they want to ask about Iran and a couple of other things.
I can try on Iran.
Go ahead.
I'll bridge this. Here you go.
Yes,
you're facing... Well, I'll try. Wait, this will work. You're facing an opponent right now in Iran that has refused to submit. You seem optimistic now that you may be closer to a deal. What's different about this moment now than in other moments where a deal has seemed close?
Well, why do you say they refused to submit? You don't.
The Chinese are not going to help us end the war in Iran.
Said if I could be of any help whatsoever, I would like to help.
Even if they could, this is a ridiculous claim. It makes the president look weak. He's begging the Chinese to open the Strait of Hormuz that his war closed. Think about how weak we look in the eyes of the rest of the world, begging the Chinese to do that work for us. Let's just be clear. The Chinese are not going to help us end the war in Iran.
Said if I could be of any help whatsoever, I would like to help.
Even if they could, this is a ridiculous claim. It makes the president look weak. He's begging the Chinese to open the Strait of Hormuz that his war closed. Think about how weak we look in the eyes of the rest of the world, begging the Chinese to do that work for us.
Sudden shift from the White House.
or a negotiating tactic aimed at pushing talks forward. The US president posted to his social media platform Monday evening saying that he had suspended a planned attack on Iran, reportedly set for Tuesday.
We were getting ready to do a very major attack tomorrow. I was asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and some others if we could put it off for 2 or 3 days, a short period of time, because they think that they are getting very close to making a deal. And if we can do that where there's no nuclear weapon going into the hands of Iran, I think, and if they're satisfied, we will be probably satisfied also.
So far, few details have emerged beyond confirmation that negotiations are ongoing. There has also been no indication of any breakthrough on key sticking points tied to Iran's nuclear program. The two sides remain divided over issues including uranium enrichment, sanctions relief, and compensation that Tehran says it is owed since the US and Israel launched a joint war. Iran's president says the country remains open to diplomacy while insisting it will not back down from its demands.
Dialogue does not mean surrender. The Islamic Republic of Iran enters into dialogue with dignity, authority, and the preservation of the nation's rights, and under no circumstances will it retreat from the legal rights of the people and the country.
The latest comments from President Trump mark a sharp contrast with his rhetoric over the weekend, including posts widely seen as threatening Iran. Among them, an image showing the president with his finger hovering over a nuclear button, appearing ready to strike.
Odef says deeply concerned by scare of spread of Ebola in DR Congo, who to hold emergency committee meeting on Ebola. Germany to admit and treat US Ebola patient. Trump says Ebola confined right now to Africa. Putin visit to China.
Last week, a visit from the US president. This week, Russia's leader arrives in Beijing. Chinese state media says it's proof of China becoming a focal point of global diplomacy. Russia says their meeting comes at a crucial moment.
We have very high expectations. In addition to the trade and economic cooperation, we're actively developing our dialogue in the fields of education.
It's a partnership both sides described as particularly privileged and strategic. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, ties between Moscow and Beijing have grown dramatically stronger.
I'm certain that Russian-Chinese cooperation has truly limitless potential and prospects.
While the West hit Russia with sanctions, China has become one of Moscow's most important economic lifelines. One major topic during Putin's visit could be the proposed Power of Siberia gas pipeline that would send more Russian Arctic gas into China. China is today buying more than 1/4 of Russia's exports. Beijing has bought more than 300 billion euros worth of Russian fossil fuels, money that has helped Moscow continue its war in Ukraine. But Ukraine barely appeared on the agenda during Donald Trump's talks with Xi Jinping last week. Instead, much of the focus appeared to center on Taiwan. Analysts say Taiwan could also loom over this week's summit. Deeper energy ties with Moscow would help secure China's fuel supplies in the event of a future conflict over the island.
News update and headlines.
Not like
Russia missile strike kills 2 injured 17 in North Ukrainian town of Ryuki. Governor announced. Russia's drone hit Naftgaz infrastructure facility in Ukraine's north, company says. Russia's Yaroslav and Rostov region under attack by drones, governor warned. Russia attacks Ukraine and Donetsk city. Ukraine launches drone toward Moscow. Russia to conduct drill of nuclear force on May 19th to 21st.
With a hypocritical attempt
to sabotage a competitor and to overcome a long history of very bad predictions about what OpenAI has been and will become.
Ex-Spanish Prime Minister, at least 2 dead, 4 injured, South Spain shooting suspect arrested, police announced. Mango founder's son arrested in probe into father's death, source close to investigation announced in Spain. France finance minister says G7 agree IMF and World Bank need to step up effort to aid vulnerable countries. Hungary's Maiga visit Poland on first tour abroad as PM seeks to reset EU ties. United Kingdom gets experimental drug from Japan to bolster hantavirus response. Neymar included in the Brazil's World Cup squad. 2026 World Cup strike threatened in Los Angeles against the presence of anti-immigration police. News updates and headlines. Crew member to stay in quarantine facility at port antivirus hit ship docks in Rotterdam. Trump says called off another attack. Trump says very positive development on Iran talks.
Yeah, straight to our correspondent in Amsterdam.
People were immediately checked, their vitals were checked, and actually most of those people, most of the crew were Filipino, then there was a handful of people from Russia and Ukraine. They will be quarantining in the port of Rotterdam. They've set up special living units, kind of white containers for them to live in for 6 weeks, and their vitals will be checked daily to ensure that this virus doesn't spread any further. Now, the Dutch 2 crew members, they were on board. They have been allowed to go and self-quarantine at home, just like the other passengers on the ship. The reason that these crew members are being kept here is that they say, the authorities say that the authorities in their home countries are not specialized in these kind of infectious diseases, and they want to make sure that this doesn't spread any further. Now, health authorities here were pretty unconcerned as none of these people were displaying any symptoms of the disease as the ship docked yesterday. However, of course, it has been deadly. There is also the body of a German woman on board who sadly died. She's being cremated locally, and her ashes will be sent to Germany as soon as that's done.
At least 141 have died in outbreak of rare state of Ebola in Congo.
The Ebola outbreak, but reassured Americans.
Yes, I'm concerned about everything, but certainly am. I think that, it's been confined right now to Africa. But it's something that has had a breakout.
U.S. officials said 1 American infected with Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo, along with 6 other high-risk contacts, would be transferred to Germany for treatment at a special facility.
It's the Bundibuja virus, a strain of Ebola.
Travel warnings and entry restrictions for non-U.S. citizens who have recently been in affected regions have been issued. These include Uganda, the DRC, and South Sudan. Meanwhile, this Bundibugyo strain of Ebola virus is currently circulating in the DRC and has already caused at least 100 deaths. Around 350 suspected cases have been reported in the DRC. Most patients are between 20 and 39 years old, and 60% are women. There is no vaccine specifically targeting this strain, but emergency medical supplies and protective equipment were delivered at Bunia Airport by the World Health Organization.
This equipment certainly won't be enough. What we've done is just the first step. We've defeated our stock in Kinshasa and brought it here.
Ebola causes a highly contagious fever. The virus has killed more than 15,000 people across Africa over the past 50 years.
Bolivia protests see violent clashes erupting in La Paz. Carlo Ancelotti praised improved fitness of Santos player Neymar. Neymar picked in Brazil World Cup squad.
Outside the squad announcement gala, fans had one message for Brazil's new head coach. Bring back Neymar.
Neymar Junior Santos.
Moments later, they got their wish. Brazil's all-time leading goal scorer will make his fourth World Cup appearance, joining the 26-man squad revealed on Monday. Named in Brazil's viral AI-generated World Cup anthem, his selection was far from certain. Questions surrounded Neymar's fitness after suffering a serious ACL injury more than 2 years ago.
We evaluated Neymar throughout the year and noticed that he played consistently in the final stretch and that his physical condition improved. We believe he is an important player who will play a key role in this World Cup.
Now 34, Neymar will be preparing for his fourth shot at football's biggest prize. After appearing in the 2014, 2018 and 2022 tournaments. The former Barcelona and PSG forward returned to his boyhood club Santos PC after a stay with Saudi Arabia's Al Hilal. Now he's back leading Brazil's charge for a sixth title. A recall that also sparked celebrations from former Brazil star and legendary left-back Marcelo.
It'll be good to see him back, I'm sure. Now to a me.
Brazilians are happy that Neymar is included in the squad of 2026 FIFA World Cup. Portneuf transformed into art in tribute to Cristo. News updates and headlines. News updates and headlines on this 19th of May 2026. Trump said he called off another attack against Iran at last minute. Trump says very positive development in Iran talks. Iran's proposal to United States call for sanction lifting and fund release, Deputy Foreign Minister says. Peace activities and special envoy for French recognition of Palestine has died at 69 years old. News updates and headlines. News update and headlines. Putin, our cooperation seeks world peace, not alienations. Putin, on his visit in China, Russia greatly respects China's century-old history. Ukraine planning attack on Russia through ballistic states. News update and headlines. News update and headlines. News update on 19th of May 2026. News update on 19th of May 2026. Brazilians are happy that Carlo Ancelotti, the head coach of Brazil, La Seleção of Brasilia, has decided to include Neymar Junior Santos into the squad of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which will start in few coming months in United States, Canada. News updates and headlines. News updates and headlines. News updates and headlines.
I learned so much from Tom. I never played quarterback. Tom saw the game through a quarterback's eyes. I saw the game through a coach's eyes. Together, I think we both learned a lot from each other.
Today, I'm thrilled to announce that we're increasing the number of drugs available on Trump RX by nearly 7 times, adding over 600 affordable generics to the website, working with industry partners. Cost-effective generic drugs are often available at just a tiny fraction of the price of their brand name equivalents, and in theory, they're the same thing. Sometimes they're better, with the same dosage, the same effectiveness, and the same active ingredients, yet many consumers do not think to ask for them. They don't know about them. By incorporating this massive catalog of low-cost generics at trumprx.gov, consumers will now have one source to ensure that they're getting the lowest possible cost on their prescription. So they have a real option now. Today, they have something that they've never had before. They've never had anything like this or even close. Today, I'm thrilled to...
We got a lot of work to do to try to figure out what led up to this and exactly what actions took place, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, the heroic actions of
San Diego Police Chief Scott Walsh praised the officers who responded to the deadly shooting on the country's largest Islamic center. He said, "I can tell you with 100% certainty the heroic action of the responding officer and the deputy is beyond words. To know that this many of our public servants are willing to leave their loved ones behind, drop what they are doing, and run toward gunfire without asking any question is remarkable."
heroic actions of the responding officers and deputies is beyond words. To know that this many of our public servants are willing to leave their loved ones behind, drop what they're doing, and run towards gunfire without asking any questions is remarkable.
President Donald Trump participated in healthcare affordability events.
4 months ago, I stood before you to announce the launch of the trumprx.gov, a brand new website featuring the largest discounts on prescription drugs in the history of our country, the history, frankly, of any country. And for decades, Americans paid the highest drug prices anywhere in the world by far. But under the most favored nation agreements I negotiated, we now pay the lowest price paid for anybody in any country. We went from the highest to the lowest, and I think outside of maybe a cure itself, it's the biggest thing to happen to healthcare and everything having to do with medical in any way, shape, or form. There's never been anything like this. We think of it, we went from the most expensive to the least expensive. So we've slashed the price of dozens of commonly used prescription drugs by differences of 400, 500, and even 600%. In my first term, I got it down 1/8 of 1%. It's the first time in 28 years it went down 1/8 of 1, and now we're talking about 4, 5, and 6, and even 700%, including for weight loss drugs, fertility treatments, insulin, and much, much more. Since that launch in February, trumprx.gov has already been visited more than 10 million times and has saved American consumers over $400 million already, and it's really the hottest thing in medicine. It's been amazing. I asked Dr. Oz, how's it doing? Bobby was there. He said, nobody's ever seen anything like this, so it's great. People are saving a lot of money. Over the next 10 years, the Council of Economic Advisors estimates that our most favored nation drug policies will save Americans over $500 billion. and this has been the greatest breakthrough in lowering healthcare costs in modern history. But we're just sort of getting started, actually, because we have a lot more to come. So today I'm thrilled to announce that we're increasing the number of drugs available on Trump RX by nearly 7 times, adding over 600 affordable generics to the website, working with industry.
U.S. Attorney General Pirro drew a hard line against Tim Rowless following a violent brawl at D.C. Fear. It was a takeover of restaurants by individuals who felt they could get away with it. Well, they are not going to get away with it. The message that runs the street is over. The city belonged to the law-abiding residents, not roaming mobs looking to make a name for themselves, contribute to the chaos and violence, or gain social media attention. These are not kids being kids.
These are not harmless gatherings. They are violent and they are disruptive. And you can see from what happened at Chipotle's this past weekend, it was not just violence occurring between individuals, it was simply destruction of property. It was a takeover of a restaurant by individuals who felt that they could get away with it. Well, they're not going to get away with it, and I'm going to tell you how in a couple of minutes. But this terrorizing is going to end, and the message that lawlessness runs the streets is over. The city belongs to law-abiding residents, not roaming mobs looking to make a name for themselves or to contribute to the chaos or violence and to get social media attention. These are not kids being kids.
In this great Millbank manufacturing facility. Do we love our American workers and the people who make our stuff? So I was talking to the owners beforehand, and they were telling me that COVID, you saw such a ramp up in business need and business use, and it reminds me that, you know, while a lot of us try to forget the craziness that was COVID 5-6 years ago, there were a lot of people who were sitting at home on a laptop doing absolutely nothing and collecting a paycheck. And there were a lot of people who had to come to work and build the things Americans need. They didn't get to sit at home and do nothing. You guys came to work, and we're proud of you for it, and we're grateful. So in addition, we have...
Body of 2 Italian divers killed in scuba diving accident in Maldives recovered. News updates and headlines. That was Prime Minister Vince speaking on manufacturing plant in Missouri. News update and headlines. Russian missile strike kills 2, injuries 17 in North Ukraine. Russia drone hit gas infrastructure facility in Ukraine, North company says. News update and headlines. Russia attacks Ukraine's Donetsk port city. Ukraine launches drone toward Moscow. Russia to conduct drills of nuclear force on May 19th and 21st. Sweden to buy 4 frigates from France's Navy Group, Prime Minister announced. Ex-Spanish Prime Minister Zapatero under investigation for influence pending. At least 2 dead, 4 injured in South Spain shooting. Suspect arrested, police announced. Mango founder's son arrested in probe into father's death. Source close to investigator says. French finance minister says G7 agree IMF and World Bank need to step up efforts to aid the vulnerable Hungary's migrant visit Poland, his first trip outside of the country. United Kingdom get experimental drug from Japan over hantavirus. Neymar included in Brazil's World Cup squad. News updates and headlines. Trump said he called off another attack against Iran at the last minute. Trump says very positive development in Iran talks. Iran's proposal to United States calls for sanction lifting and fund release, Deputy Foreign Minister says. After brunch, news updates and headlines.
Some of my favorite elected leaders in all of the United States here. And so I want to make
Prime Minister Vince talking to manufacturer functions.
So in addition, we have some of my favorite elected leaders in all of the United States here. And so I want to make sure that each of them get a proper shout out. First of all, I think that you all have maybe in the great state of Missouri, the very best United States Senator. I'm not going to get in trouble for saying that. Am I, Eric?
Thank you, Jesus, for letting me do this for a living. Ella Langray got emotional talking about how faith carried her through one of the biggest nights of her career after securing a record-setting number of wins at the ACM Awards. President Trump says talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping resulted in new agreement aimed at peace and prosperity between the United States and China. Among the reported deals include China will buy 200 Boeing jets, purchase 200 Boeing jets, purchase 17 billion US dollars plus US agriculture product over the next 3 years, renew listing for 400 Americans beef facility and resume poultry import from certain US states. News update and headlines. Judge suppresses some item from in Luigi Mangioni's backpack that was searched by police in Altona, Pennsylvania. A French professional soccer match was called off after angry fans stormed the field just 22 minutes into the game. Masked supporters broke through security barriers, threw flares onto the pitch, and forced players to run for safety as riot police rushed in to gain control. French Sport Minister Marina Ferrari condemned the chaos as unacceptable and officially later abandoned the match over serious safety concerns. News updates and headlines on the 19th of May 2026. 20-year-old Arkansas man was arrested after allegedly threatening to start a mass shooting at Walmart if the country shut down over hantavirus fear. Authority says the FBI tracked the threat through an online video game that after another player recorded the conversation and sent it in. Investigators said the gamers username in the game recorded helped read agent directly to Aaron Breen, who now faces terrorist tweeting charges. News updates and headlines. Aaron Rai breakthrough at the PGA Championship with the biggest win of his career at Aronimink after emerging from a packed low board heading into Sunday. The English golfer held off golf's biggest names to capture his first major title under immense pressure. Years of grinding on tour finally led to a career-defining moment on of golf's biggest stages. Russian President Vladimir Putin visit comes day after Donald Trump's visit in China to meet Xi Jinping. News update and headlines. Ella Landry opened up during her Female Artist of the Year speech after sweeping all 7 of her ACM Award nominations.
Today I was having a strange day. I don't know what it is about awards, but I have strange days in the mornings here. And I walked right into Lainey's room, and I just got emotional, and she hugged me, wrapped me up, and started praying for me. And then all of a sudden, here comes Miranda Lambert in her little pink hat. And I would not be standing up here without just the encouragement of so many women. Kelsey, thank you so much for loving me. Thank you to my parents for believing in me and my family for showing up and being weird as always, so it keeps me humble. Thank you, Jesus, for letting me do this for a living. Thank you.
A Christian pastor kept preaching as UK police officer pressed him in handcuffs on busy street outside London. Pastor Steve May, who is 6 years old, says officer arrested him after complaining about his sermon where he preached about Jesus and spoke critical about Islam. I don't preach hate, I preach the love of God, the mercy of God, and the goodness of God in Christ Jesus. Police initially told Mary he was under arrest for assaulting a teenager, a charge Mary denied and which was later dropped. Mary remained under investigation for alleged other offense. News update and headlines. Israel military issue fresh evacuations to the people of South Lebanon. Trump says he called off another attack against Iran in the last minute. News updates and headlines. But Russia intelligence, Ukraine plan to attack from territory of ballistic states. News update and headlines. Russian intelligence announced that Ukraine plans to attack from territory of ballistic states. Russia and China cooperate in education and science, Putin says. Putin says our cooperation seeks world peace, not alienations. Putin says Russia great respects China's centuries-old history. News updates and headlines. Vladimir Putin addresses Chinese public ahead of state visit. News updates and headlines. News updates and headlines. Vladimir Putin to Chinese.
I greet you. I am pleased once again to visit Beijing at the invitation of my long-standing good friend, the President of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping. The regular exchange of visits and Russian-Chinese talks at the highest level are an important, integral part of our joint efforts to develop the entire range of relations between our two countries and to unlock their truly boundless. Let me remind you that 25 years ago, Russia and China signed the Treaty of Good Neighborliness, Friendship, and Cooperation, which laid a solid foundation for the formation of genuinely strategic interaction and comprehensive partnership for the benefit of our countries and peoples. Today, Russian-Chinese relations have indeed reached an unprecedented level. Their special character is reflected in the atmosphere of mutual understanding and trust, and in our readiness to cooperate on mutually beneficial, equal terms, to conduct a respectful dialogue, and to support one another on issues affecting the vital interests of both countries, including the defense of sovereignty and national unity. Russia and China look to the future with confidence and are actively developing contacts in politics, the economy, and the defense sphere, while expanding humanitarian exchange and encouraging person-to-person contacts. Together, we are doing everything to deepen our bilateral interactions and to advance the cause of the global development of our states. It is important that these very issues set the agenda for the forthcoming talks in Beijing. I sincerely value President Xi Jinping's commitment to long-term cooperation with Russia. I am convinced that our warm, friendly contacts help us to set the boldest plans for the future and to bring them to life. Russian-Chinese trade continues to grow, having long since exceeded $200 billion US. Mutual settlements are now conducted almost entirely in rubles and yuan, and major initiatives are being implemented in key areas of cooperation. After the successful completion of the Cross Years of Culture, the Russian-Chinese Years of Cooperation in Education began in January, becoming the 10th such interstate project in the humanitarian sphere. I would note that in Russia there is a great respect for China's centuries-old history and its achievements in culture, art, and science. We are keen for our peoples to draw closer, to understand one another even better, and to adopt all that is best in the rich traditions and heritage of our two countries. That is why we welcome the introduction on a reciprocal basis of a visa-free regime between our states. This not only promotes more active business and tourist exchanges, but also opens up new opportunities for communication and for establishing contacts between the citizens of Russia and China. The close Russian-Chinese strategic link plays an important stabilizing role on the world stage. At the same time, our friendship is not directed against anyone. Rather, we work for peace and common prosperity. It is precisely in this spirit that Moscow and Beijing act in coordinated manner to defend international law and the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations in their entirety as an interconnected whole. We maintain active cooperation within the United Nations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, and other multilateral structures, making a substantial contribution to resolving pressing global and regional issues. I am convinced that together we shall continue to do everything possible to deepen Russian-Chinese partnership and good neighborliness for the dynamic development of our two countries and the well-being of our peoples, and in the interests of upholding global security and stability. I look forward to seeing you soon in Beijing. Thank you for your attention.